Hello my hungry friends, today we're making Polish chicken soup, ROSÓł with homemade noodles. Today I'm going to teach you how to make the easiest soup on the planet Earth, Polish chicken soup. This is the kind of soup that you can start it on Sunday morning. Kids are running around the house like crazy. You just pop it in, turn it on, and you go about your day. You can even put it in a crock pot. Turn it on, leave for a few hours, come back to a great smelling kitchen in the house. So we're going to start by washing our chicken. I've already done that, and I patted it dry. So I'm going to pop it into my pot. I have a nice organic chicken. We're going to use the whole thing for this. We want our soup to be flavorful, and a nice organic chicken, or if you have access to a farmer, get one from a farmer, it'd be even better. So I'm just going to wash my hands real quick. All right, we're all cleaned up now. Chicken's in the stock pot, and I have just a few vegetables that I recommend you always have in your kitchen, your pantry. So you most likely have carrots. This is a parsnip that I've already peeled. Parsnip is the root part of parsley leaf. So pop that in, the 2 carrots. And this is, I get asked about this vegetable once in a while. This is a celery root. It's round. I cut it in quarters. And we're going to use just a quarter of it because they're kind of large. You can even use a little bit less than that. I'm just going to get my board. And really easy way to peel this is just to kind of cut the skin around it off. And if you do your shopping during the week, just go ahead and get you these ingredients so they're in your fridge. And when Sunday comes, it's literally 10 minutes worth of work. This is already in the pot. Then I'm going to use the green part of the leek. And this is also kind of an understated vegetable in America, I think. People don't know what to do with it. But we can use the green part of it for the soup. And then I also have a recipe for a leek salad on my page. I'll post a link in the description to it. And these green tops are kind of hard and they don't work well in the salad. They're kind of tough. But they will give us plenty of flavor for the soup. So I'm just going to cut this part and leave that for the salad. But make sure you wash it well in between the leaves because often you get a bunch of sand in there. I'm not going to worry about doing much to it. I'm just going to fold it and put it in here. And then I have half an onion, which I have burnt in this iron skillet. And this is a trick that my family always did for chicken soup. And as soon as this is on the stove and the onion starts burning, this aroma starts showing up in the house and filling the house, and then we know it's chicken soup day. But I just cut it in quarters, and I didn't put any fat in it, no oil, no butter or nothing. And since I have an electric stove, I'm using a cast iron pan. But if you're using a gas stove, you can just put it right on top of your grate, turn the gas on, and let it burn. And this will also be a bunch of flavor. So that goes in. And then I'm just going to do a tablespoon of salt. We're going to worry about adjusting the saltiness later. And then I have peppercorns, whole peppercorns. So the recipe says 6 or 10. This is what I do. I just do a pinch in. Don't worry about it. Just pop it in. It'll work fine. And then I have another seed. This is allspice. I also get asked about this. This kind of looks like the peppercorn. They're just a little bit larger seeds. And they're also full of flavor. And Poles use the combination of these 3 in most soups. So you have peppercorns, allspice, and bay leaves. And with this, I also go in. Don't worry about counting. Don't worry about measuring. That is it. And we have bay leaves. And for this pot, I'll just do 3 or 4. Also, don't worry about about measuring that too much. And that is it. This is our chicken soup. You can, again, if you're doing this in the crock pot, put everything in, fill it with water, turn it on low or high. It won't hurt it either way. If you're at home and you're cooking this at home, fill your pot so it covers everything, all the veggies and meat. I have it all the way to the top if you want to take a look. This is how much we have. And I'm gonna put it on my stove. I'm gonna turn it on high at first so it starts boiling. And then once it comes to boil, I'm gonna turn it way down from, my stove goes from 1 to 9. I'm gonna set it to 2. So just very, very low simmer. This is what will give us the clarity in chicken soup that everyone is looking for. We want a nice kind of yellowish broth that's not murky, and it's nice and clear. So the low simmering does the trick. And again, if you're doing this on a Sunday morning, which we always did at home, mom or dad would start the pot, the soup was boiling, we were having breakfast, and then watching TV or whatever, doing our thing, and the soup was just there waiting for us in a few hours. And it was a kind of no fuss type of dinner. It's just doing its thing, and you have beautiful chicken soup in a little while. You don't even have to worry about how long it's on the stove. Just let it be. So I'm going to start this, and we're also going to make homemade noodles today to go with our chicken soup. So I'm going to start this, and we'll come right back, and we'll start on the pasta. My chicken soup just come up to a boil. I'm going to turn it down now to setting number 2. My stove goes from 1 to 9, and 2 will just keep it at the sweet spot. If you want to take a look, there's a little bit of that foam that collected on top that we get from cooking meat. Don't worry about it. Some people strain it. I don't. I have a trick to get rid of it later. So keep watching, and I'll show you. And if you're not into making your own pasta, your job with chicken soup is done. Just get some angel hair pasta, break it up before cooking. Cook it, I think you can cook it for 3 minutes or so, and serve your chicken soup in a little while. We'll get to that after I'm done with pasta. So if you want to make pasta with me, come on. I'm using my KitchenAid today. By the way, this is not a sponsored post. I'm saying I'm using it because I really like using it. But I use it to make my dough with the hook attachment. Because it's really easy for me. I don't have to worry about kneading the dough much, or it's really simple and fast. So I have 3 cups of all-purpose flour, and I'm going to add a teaspoon of salt, and then we're going to add eggs and water. I'm going to add 3 eggs, and these are about medium. So the water will kind of depend. Oh, I got a little eggshell. The amount of water will depend on how big your eggs are. So you're going to have to judge that by yourself. But we're going to just start with the eggs and then add the water tablespoon by tablespoon. I'll rinse my hands real quick. And I'm going to whisk these just a little bit. And I have also some extra flour handy just in case my dough gets too wet. So I made a hole in my in my flour and put the salt in there, and this will go in there. And I'm gonna attach my hook attachment and let this go just on the lowest setting. And this will start combining. And I have boiled water that is still warm but not hot. And we'll start adding it if we need to. And we will need to add a little bit. Just the amount of it will depend kind of on how big your eggs are. If you want to take a look, this is kind of starting to combine, and it's a little crumbly, but still a little wet, but kind of getting dry. So I'm going to add a tablespoon of water and let it go. We're probably going to add about 6 to 8. And got another one. And this will slowly combine into a smooth dough. This is kind of like making, I'm adding a third tablespoon of water. This is kind of like making pasta dough. You want it smooth and well combined. So this is 4th tablespoon, and I'm not adding any fat to it, no butter or oil. Poached pasta is made this way. You can actually make it with just eggs, but we always added some water to it. Grandma was the only one who made pasta in our house, and I helped her because she needed extra hands, and you'll know why in a little bit. I'm adding another tablespoon. Yeah, just because she needed extra hands for spreading the pasta once it was rolled out. And this is pretty much, it's really simple, just eggs, flour, water, and salt. This is slowly combining. And if we were doing this by hand, obviously it's a little bit more time consuming and strenuous on the body. But it's also a good workout. So if you want to skip the gym and make dough for the pasta, go for it. And I'm going to do one more. I believe this is number 6. So as I said, my grandma used to make the pasta dough in our house. She would bring out the big pastry board, roll it out, make the strips, and then we had this little tiny pasta cutter, I guess you call it. It's 2 rollers that kind of meet together and cut the bit long strips. I have one too. It's not old school like ours used to be. It was a little crank that I would crank and feed the pasta. She would catch it and put it out on the pastry board to dry a little bit. So my pasta dough is combining. I feel it needs just a tiny bit of dryness, just to keep rolling. So I just added a sprinkle and let the hook do the job. I will take out the dough now. I will work it on my surface just a couple more times, and then we'll get to making the pasta. So the dough is pretty hard, and that's okay. We want to be able to cut it with our cutter. So we want it a little hard. I have to move something to make. Okay, so I'm kneading the dough a little bit more to just make it a little bit smoother, but it's pretty much done. And now we're gonna attach my pasta attachments to roll it out. And this is gonna be really easy and simple. I've also posted a link in the description if you wanted to acquire these for your kitchen. They're really handy. So I'm just gonna cut a little piece out, and you don't have to worry about covering your dough. It's actually good for it to be exposed to air and dry a little bit. So I have two attachments. The first one will roll our dough into long strips, and the second one is called the spaghetti cutter, and this will cut our pasta into thin noodles. So I'm going to start with this one, and there is settings 1 to 8. 8 is the thinnest, 1 is the fattest. So we're going to start with 1 and turn this on. Hang on. This hook is making noises here.
Catch your breath.
Okay, this is going to start going through here. And we want to do 1, give it a little flour, we don't want it sticking, and 1 again, and this is why Grandma needed extra set of hands, because there was a crank on one side. I was doing the cranking and she was doing the catching. I did 1, then I'm gonna go to 2. And at this point you will see if your dough has gotten enough water or if it's too watery. If it's falling apart and not really staying together, that means you have too much water in it or too much moisture, and you have to add a little bit more flour to it. So you can just flour the surface of it right now, and it'll absorb all that flour, and you can try keep going. So I'm gonna go from 2 to 3. And we want this dough to be as thin as possible. We're gonna try to make pasta that is similar to angel hair. So those are really thin pieces. So I'm on setting 3 right now. And I'm gonna go to 1 more. 4. And you can probably cut this piece in half too if you want. And so it's a little bit easier to handle. But this roller rolls it out to really, really thin and even strips. And 4 is what I want to do. I'm not gonna go any less than 4. And I'm gonna cut this in piece right now. And I'm gonna just lay this out here because we want these guys to dry. And the drying will help the pasta not to stick after it's cut into those small strips. So we want this to dry for a few minutes, probably about 10. You can move it to somewhere else where you have a little more space to. Flour it real well. And I'm going to go back to 1. I have done pierogi with using the pasta roller. It's nice and it rolls out the dough nice and even, so it's definitely useful in Polish kitchen. My KitchenAid is getting old. I got it as a hand-me-down from a family member, and I checked the serial number on it. It was produced in '99, so I'm glad it's still working, and I hope it keeps working. because I use it all the time. I have several attachments for it. I have this one. As I said, this rolls out flat like this, and it also rolls out to make pasta, so I like it a lot. Or to make pierogi. Don't be afraid to use a lot of flour. Oh, I'm gonna go one more. And then after this, we will attach the thin spaghetti attachment and make some pasta. And at my home, Grandma would always, on Sunday, she would make a large batch of pasta like this. And she would then lay it out on the pastry board after dinner. It would just sit out and dry. And it was enough for a whole week normally. And she would, once it dried, so if you want to do this, if you want to do a larger batch like this, this is a pretty good batch, 2 or 3 cups. You can, once it's in pasta form, she would put it into a paper box or shoebox, and you just stored it in a cabinet, uncooked, just cut like this. And once you dry it, which you'll dry for 24 hours or so in warm conditions, if it's a little cool in your house, you just leave it out for a couple days, and then put it in a box. And paper works well because it lets the air circulate still, and so the pasta you'll keep drying. And when you're ready to cook it, you just pop it in boiling water, and you're good to go. So I'm gonna do now we're on to the spaghetti attachment. And I'm gonna let these dry for a couple more minutes. As they dry, they get a little bit hard, obviously. And they're easier, they won't stick right away. So I'm gonna let them rest for about 10 minutes. Pasta has been drying for about 10 minutes, and it's significantly harder now, which again will make our noodles not stick, and we will give them plenty of flour also. I just did 1 strip here, and I will continue with these. At the edges may get a little bit more crusty than the rest, but don't worry about it, they'll all cook in the water. And just catch these, set them aside, give them a sprinkle of flour, just kind of move them around. Try not to do a super thick layer, we don't want them sticking. And one small batch we will boil, and the rest, like I said, we will dry for a couple days, and then it will sit in your pantry, and when you're ready to have homemade pasta again, you just pull it out, cook a little bit, and move on with your day. So I'm going to go ahead and do most of these with my cutter, but then I also want to cut one by hand just to show you, in case you don't have this handy dandy machine. You can obviously do all of it by hand. You can roll it out with your rolling pin to as thin as you can get it. Keep flouring your surface and roll it out to as thin as you can go, and then I will show you how to cut it by hand. I've cut most of my pasta with my pasta cutter, but I'm going to do 1 strip by hand just to show you. If you're doing it by hand, roll this out with your rolling pin as thin as you can go, and then once the strip has dried, we will fold it. So keep it floured, give it plenty of flour. We don't want the sticking. And this is probably as long as I want to go with the strip. This is how long our pasta is going to be. So I'm just going to roll it like this. And the thickness of the noodle will kind of depend on your preference. I like my noodles for chicken soup pretty thin because that's what I grew up with, and I just kind of follow that right now with my noodles too. So I'm going to cut these pretty thin, but you go ahead and kind of judge and do whatever you like. But since the dough has been drying for a little while, 10 minutes about, it's pretty hard and the noodles won't be sticking to each other. And we're going to throw this into boiling water and boil it, and then when our chicken soup is done, we'll pop this in and it'll be ready. And that is it, my friends. And just kind of mix it around. It's got plenty of flour on it, so it's not sticking. And you can definitely tell the difference between hand cut. There's some unevenness in them. Some of them are a little bit thicker than others. This is cut by the cutter, and this is cut by hand. They both look pretty. These are definitely look more homemade with the thickness. And if you're storing your noodles for later use, put them out. If you have a lot of surface, kitchen surface, you can just leave them out. I don't, so I put them on the tray, and they are kind of loose on here. But since they're not dried completely, you kind of want to go and move them around a little bit every once in a while. They will sit on here at least till tomorrow, and then tomorrow I will check them, and if the noodle is completely dry, it'll break when I touch it. That's when they're ready to be put away, and in that case you can stack them in your box for a very long time. They won't sit there because you'll use them before they go bad. So go ahead and store them like this, and just let's boil these. I have water going here, and I'm going to add a tablespoon of salt. We want these salty, and just a splash of oil so that they don't stick. And I'm going to take a batch. I'm going to shake off the flour a little bit, and in they go. And if your noodles are thicker, they will have to go obviously a little bit longer. If they're super thin, it'll only be 3-4 minutes. So just be the judge. Taste them in about 3 minutes from the time they start boiling. And once done, we'll drain them and set them aside for our soup. My chicken soup has been on the stove for a couple of hours now. And if you're doing it on a Sunday morning and you're not really timing it, just cook it as long as you want to, a couple hours, then turn it off and just let it sit. If you're kind of timing it and you want to eat it right away when it's ready, you can check it by just putting your spoon into it or a fork and making sure the meat is tender and kind of falling off the bone. And as you can see, I just lightly grab it and it's just falling apart. So this is a good time. Leave it like that. As you can see, our broth is pretty clear already. There's a little bit of that foam that was collecting on the top from the beginning, but it's kind of staying in one piece. So that's why I don't remove it. I just let it be. And if this is simmering on low, just a bubble, your soup should be as clear as mine. And you can see a nice fatty layer on top. If you want to make a little bit healthier version, you're welcome to cool your soup and then skim some of the fat off and then reheating it again. I never do that because that's where flavor is. So the veggies that we have in the soup, the carrots, the parsnip, and the celery, you can either eat it, you can just chop it up and put it in your soup also, or you can take it out once the soup is done, cool it, and slice it for salad. I have a recipe for salad called sałatka jarzynowa in Polish. It's a veggie salad, and it was often made after chicken soup was done because of all the vegetables that are in it. And you add egg to it and some potatoes and some other things. And it's an awesome way to use all of your ingredients and not chunk them. And the chicken, you can take off the bone, eat some in the soup, and the rest you can either utilize for a different dish, or I often make pasztet out of it. And pasztet is a meat pate made, normally I make it out of chicken just because I make chicken soup a lot. But I'll also post a recipe to chicken pate. I won't go into it much. But this way we're utilizing 100% of our ingredients, and this is what we all know Poles are known for. We're stretching our ingredients as much as possible. So we're going to use it once to make the soup, and then again to make a whole new dish. So now to serve our soup, I have taken some of the carrot out and I sliced it, and this is how you'll see chicken soup served in Poland. So there'll be some noodles in it, sliced carrot, and it'll be garnished with parsley. So I sprinkled some on top. And now I know Americans like to eat a little bit of meat in their chicken soup, so you're obviously welcome to take some of the chicken out and put it in your bowl. But I'm not going to do that today. And then additional tip to get some of those floating pieces out is pour your soup through a strainer. And I normally do this right over my serving bowl. And I just take a little bit of my stock and just pour it over. And I can see from here that it's nice and clear. Take a look. See how nice and clear it is? I would taste this, but it'll take my tongue off, so I'm not going to. But take your time and taste it, and then if it needs a little bit more salt, you can either salt it on the plate or salt it on top in the pot. And then normally I would also sprinkle some freshly ground pepper on top. And some people like it very heavy with pepper or not. And your soup is ready. Gorgeous chicken soup. Should we give it a taste? I'm scared.
Don't be scared.
Oh yeah, no salt needed. It's a little bit sweet from the carrot, and you can taste the vegetables in it. You can taste the parsley, and obviously the chicken is very flavorful. What?
Celery root.
Celery root, yes. And the little bit of parsley that's on top gives additional flavor to it too. And I haven't had homemade noodles like this in a little while. And I tasted some just a little bit ago. And it's like being home again. So good. Make some for home. Make some for your kids. They'll love you. Smacznego.
Hey, don't do that on camera.
I immediately have an itch. Stuck.
You ain't here, go. What are you facing?
Oh my gosh, so good.
It tastes amaze balls.
You feel me?
It tastes amaze balls.
Yeah, it's good.
Mm-hmm.